Welcome to your readings for the week of the 7th through the 13th. A lot more chill this week. Funny thing I want to share with you guys. My head always goes to this place where it's like, okay, when things get crazy, as soon as we get past that crazy point, things will go back to normal. And they never do, because I don't really think that normal is a thing that exists. I think normal is a thing that when things change and we look back on it, that looked like normal, but we don't really recognize it as being quote unquote normal when we're in it. It's kind of a weird cycle that I noticed during the Mercury retrograde. Thought I'd share. The shadow period ends on Tuesday. Yeah, been a week of let's just get this all out in the open right now. Let's get your attention in a very crazy way. Um, almost every single day. So that's what I get for saying that the Mercury retrograde really wasn't that bad. The shadow period was like, wow, mind blowing the whole time. Okay, let's get to our reading. And we are going to start with Darcy, like we always do. Taurus, we still have Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, of course. And actually focuses on self. It's all about you. Jupiter is all about growth and expansion. Um, in many cases, I've heard it interpreted by other astrologers that Jupiter in the rising means a large person. That's not saying that you're big, more like a large personality, a personality that comes into the room and everybody knows that that person is there because they're very social, because they leave an impression. And in many cases, they're very open, which I really feel is who you are. And I also feel, or I also know that you are in some cases loud and proud, which I totally mesh with because I am too. It's all about really just saying, this is who I am and I love it, and this is who I'm going to be because that's what I'm supposed to do, right? The only real challenge to that comes up with Jupiter square with Pluto. Pluto's all about change and transformation in some cases, harnessing your personal power, but in focused on career because this is lining up as a challenge. It's almost like somebody is saying, you know what, you need to tone it down just a little bit. You're too much for the what's going on around here. That is such a trigger for me. I hate it when it comes up. But I have learned also to realize that usually when that happens, it's because people around me don't understand. Maybe they're threatened with my vibe in some way. And their reaction is always going to be for you to tone it down rather than for them to adjust to it. So maybe find a compromise there so it's not so much of a challenge and you are not dimming your light and who you are, but you're also making it more comfortable for them in the same way. It's kind of an adjustment. Uranus is in an opposition with the moon just at the beginning of the week. So we're really talking today, actually. And more so in the morning than later on. And it's just a little bit of a challenge when, we're talking specifically about, and actually Uranus is going to move. No, it's not. I'm lying. Never mind. Scratch that. Um, almost like a panic over money. And this is really because the moon's focus is really not just on money, but on your relationship with your finances. I really feel that this is just one of those trigger boom things that come up, and it's sort of like you need to pay attention to this. You need to be able to identify where you might be getting in your own way or creating the obstacle around your financial relationship, to be able to embrace a healthy financial relationship. So, a lot of times we build patterns and in the way that we do things, and our intentions are always to do this, but we can't. Our intentions are, let's say, to build a savings, but instead of doing that, the money comes in, we spend it, the money comes in, we spend it, and a year later we're in the same boat that we were before. So I feel like this sort of mini panic is coming up to help with that. It is coming up for a reason, to draw your attention to it so that you can identify it. And rather than beating yourself up over it, it's giving you the opportunity to change that, to identify it, say, this, I don't want to do it this way anymore. I'm going to put things in the right place to manifest a good relationship with my finances, if that makes sense. Other than those two challenges, all of the energy is positive as both Jupiter and Uranus move into trines and sextiles, with grand sextiles with other planets. And a lot of that energy is focused towards your career, your long-term career goals, specifically as Mars is a part of all of this as well. And with that being said, that kind of positive energy, let's just put it this way. Just because someone else has a problem with your energy and your personality and who you are, doesn't mean that everybody does. And that's what you also have to keep in mind as well, is that who you are is what makes you successful. Those are the tools that you came into this lifetime with in order to be successful. So always keep that in mind. There's always the people out there that are trying to dim our light for a reason, and we don't have to let them do it. And that was one of the hardest lessons I think I ever learned in my entire life, was to not give them the power to do that, you know? Only I have the power to do that. I have total control over my light switch, so to speak. Okay, so I do have my cards this time because I did forget last time. The Wheel of Fortune. This is fantastic, actually. This is a fantastic card for this week, with all of that energy going towards your long-term financial and career goals. It is literally like a visualization of you sitting at the table with all the stuff on top of it, and you're like, I'm organizing all of it right now. It's a good motivation to move in the right direction. And the Wheel of Fortune in this position is all about good luck. It's all about prosperity. It's all about what your intentions are now. You will do nothing but continue to follow through with those intentions, as long as you keep your mind focused and clear on what you want. The minute your mind starts to go into that worry place, that's where everything gets screwed up. So that's what I have for you this week. It's pretty good. Moving on to Kendra. So we still have Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. They're causing a couple of challenges here. The first of which, when I recorded the horoscopes, I thought of you immediately, because I know that this is a very big problem for you. It's a very deep trigger for you. And that is Uranus's square with Pluto that goes on all week long, probably into the next couple of weeks, really, although its focus will change. Jupiter is focused on self, no longer retrograde. This is like Kendra saying, okay, I've eliminated these problems. I am embracing these things that are going to help me. No one is standing in my way. This is what I'm going to do. I'm all powerful. I'm the leader here. I'm driving the bus here. And then this challenge comes along. And Pluto is focused on career. It's all about change and transformation because the two, I mean, these two should work together to create magic. I mean, just mass amounts of success here. But because they're not working together and because there's a challenge between them, it feels more like somebody is saying, I'm sorry, you need to tone down your whole thing here because it's just too much for me. And that's why I thought of you, because I know that just like myself, that is a huge trigger because it's happened so many times in your life. So this is what we need to do. I feel that it's really important and it's time to really look at that in a different way because it's not going to stop happening. In fact, it's most destructive when when it revolves around your own career and what you're currently creating right now. It makes you feel like you're not good enough and you can't create blah, 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 right? The whole hamster wheel thing. So when that comes up, I've switched to, okay, they can't handle my light. That doesn't mean I have to dim it. In some cases, I'll make a compromise with them and manage it a little bit, maybe not because, quite too abrupt and straight to the point, but also, well, understanding theirs, but not completely taking it away. I feel like it's important to know that every single time somebody says you are too much for them, that we turn it into a them problem and not a me problem. That's what always trips us up. Um, Outside of that, all of the energy is pointing towards success and the planets working together to help with that success, specifically with Jupiter's grand sextile with Mars, which is focused on long-term goals, financial goals, career goals, doesn't matter, whatever goals you want it to be focused on, as well as Saturn, which is reminding you that you want to make sure that you have the proper support systems set up to handle those goals. So, yes, your family has something to do with that, but you want to make sure that you have professional support in order to ensure success in specific professional things like your career goals and your financial goals. I think, relying on your family for support is important, but I think we often make a mistake of thinking that that's the best option also because it's not always the best option and it's nothing against them. It's more looking at it as it's their job to be supportive in other things, not necessarily your business and not necessarily how you manage your business's money. That is something, that a darn good bookkeeper should be doing for you. So that's what I got there. It's really weird. Malio is here and she's showing me like a shoe shiner, and it's like you wouldn't. I almost want to say she's saying something along the lines of you almost wouldn't you wouldn't take your shoes to a mechanic shop to be repaired because she's showing me like oil all over the shoes and stuff like that. You wouldn't take it to a mechanic shop to be clean or prepared, so or repaired. So why would you rely on somebody who has less knowledge of what you need? So that's that. I'm gonna pull a card for you. I probably shuffled these a lot. But honestly, I lost count and I was told to shuffle one more time. They cut into places. Okay, here we go. Strength in reverse. not loving this, actually, with all the energy going towards positive things. Well, okay, Mars is involved too. This is one of those reminders to bring self-care into it and to make sure that, again, there's a balance between the energy you're putting into your goals and what you're putting into yourself and your family, of course. And I feel like it's not in three separate chunks, as in career, you, family. It's half and half, career, you, and family. And that's usually where I think we start to sacrifice our self-care practices, if that makes sense. And that's not what you want to do. You want to make sure, you can't have a perfect balance of the time. Just do the best you can, but don't skip it, if that makes sense. I know you know this, but I feel like there's going to be at least two separate times and opportunities where this may come up this week. And you don't want to end up sick at the end of the week. It's kind of like if you do, you're going to be frustrated at yourself because you've learned this lesson, you've been around, you've been over it already. You have to be reminded until you listen. That's, in my experience, how that works. So that's what I have for you, Kendra. I'm going to move on to Jeannette. There are no planets in Gemini this week. Vespa continues to be an influence for Gemini. Vespa's is influencing the mind and how we mentally process things right now. Haha, funny for Gemini still. But we're also, Gemini's influence is moving into focusing on the past. And to me, this is an interesting combination because Vespa is retrograde. With Vespa's retrograde energy, she's all about security and creating that secure space for yourself. In retrograde, it sort of feels like or looks like no matter how much work you put into it, you're not able to create that space for yourself. There's the constant worry of what's going to happen, and is the other shoe going to drop, and blah blah blah. And this is often a time where we start to waste our mental energy thinking back to times that were quote unquote perfect, which they weren't. It's just our perception in the moment, and either wishing we could go back to that, or pining over what we've lost instead of seeing what we've gained, if that makes sense. Now, I know you well enough to know that I feel you're very happy where you are. But I also know that since you had the neck surgery, it has been really difficult, and it feels like one thing after another. And I do get the impression that right now it feels like there is no end in sight and nothing is going to change, and it's very frustrating. And that's all happening in here. And you're creating this story for yourself while you worry and obsess over what's happening. And that isn't helping you at all. You're not motivated to do anything about it. You're not actually actively pursuing something. You're throwing all of these little things out into the pond and hoping that you catch something. And that generally doesn't work very well either. Focus on one thing at a time. Take yourself out of that scattered 20 irons in the fire mode. You can. Just because you're a Gemini doesn't mean you have to live there all the time. And I know many Geminis, I know you know how to do this. Take yourself out of that and focus on one or two things and nothing but that. When you start to feel your brain jump to other things, harness it back to those one or two things that may bring you what you need sooner than all of the other possible things that you could do, if that makes sense. Honestly, I think for us intellectuals, this is so something that I've struggled with so much over the last year or so. It's a constant, my brain is constantly got to fix this problem, got to fix this problem. But instead of honing into one thing, I focus my energy on like 20 different things, none of which nothing ever gets done there. And so it's just, it's a vicious cycle. You don't want to be in that cycle anymore. It's really frustrating and annoying. And you feel defeated. You feel like you've beaten yourself up, probably because in many ways you have. That makes sense. So that's what I have for you this week. Every time you find yourself getting into that space, take yourself out of it. Focus it on one and a secondary thing. I'm seeing two for some reason. That's important. You know better than I do. One more thing. Stop taking on your hubby's worries and let him handle his while you handle yours. That also is getting in the way just a little bit. One more shuffle. King of Cups in reverse. This is very interesting. This is very interesting. I always felt in this deck, particularly when I pull cards for myself, the King of Cups always was my husband. But I feel that it represents Mario a lot. And I did say one more thing and brought him up right before I pulled that card. So I think this might have something to do with him. So the King of Cups in this position indicates possessiveness, jealousy, need to be more secure and positive about the future, everything in moderation. So this is like, seriously, cut that worry out. And, the more you obsess over what's going to happen, the more you manifest all of your fears, right? And I know it's not easy to say stop worrying, okay? And Mario is a Taurus, and they are known for being warriors, like a lot. But in all honesty, you can help him by not so much trying to fix the situation, but maybe trying to find the words. It's like I can see it. The word diffuse is coming up around this, and it's almost like changing the conversation from listening to the worries to let's gradually come around to a place where we're looking for a possible solution to this problem. It's when we get freaked out and exhausted and overly frustrated, overly pissed off, overly something, when we start to make those snap decisions. And I'm not saying that he's going to do that. I'm saying that it's not good for his health to be in this situation. And he will get to a point where he's making snap decisions because he just can't do it anymore. If that makes sense. So that is what I have for you, Jeannette. moving on to Connie, isn't it so nice that there is nothing going on in Leo at all, but we are still focused on family, as if we really wanted to continue to be focused on family? I know, I know. Probably not this week, but next week that will change. And interestingly, oddly enough, actually, a lot has been going on there in the past couple of weeks anyway, with the backlash of Christmas and then this whole thing with your dad and going to the doctor and stuff like that. It's all very frustrating. And it's like you're going back and forth between dad and son, dad and son, dad and son. Because these are the two really that you have the most challenges with. The rest of them don't, I hate to say it this way, but they don't matter as much. They affect you, but not in the same way. You're not wanting something from them as much as you do from dad and son. And what I'm seeing is that as you go through the day doing what you're doing, it's bouncing back and forth between dad and son, dad and son, dad and son in your mind. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And it's just, this is why you're exhausted. It's like you're playing a tennis game with yourself, really. And it's literally just wearing you out because the more you think about it, the more angry you get. And there is no pleasant, easy answer to either one of these situations. So it's really important that you put boundaries on your brain on that before it makes you crazy. I mean, because it doesn't matter if you're taking a break or not, it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. Eventually, the more that happens, the more open you are to saying something that maybe shouldn't be said or in a way that it shouldn't be said. Even though you have the right to do so, it's not necessarily going to work out the way you want it to. So you want to avoid that happening at all costs. And I just feel like the last couple of months, you're at your wit's end with it. And I get that 100%. Our ego says it gives us the right, but reality says whether we have the right or not, how we deal with this and approach and communicate in the situation makes a difference, even when it seems like it doesn't. So that's that part. I do see at least 2 appointments this week. I don't know why, but there is something about this man's ears. They're like huge, just like they stick out. Like you really see them. Sweet little old man with ears for days. Don't know what that's all about. Um, I heard Frankie say big ears, which can also mean like he hears everything, even when he's not supposed to. Not sure what that's about. This is not one of your family members. Um, the sweet energy, this old man. Not a lot you can do for him, but you can help him. That makes sense. The other one I feel is a reschedule of a couple. And they like you, so they baked. Not sure if that means that they actually did bake something before you come by, or it's a symbolizes that they are comfortable with you. I mean, and enough to, like, your family now. Here, I made you muffins or something like that. I can't even tell actually if they're muffins or cookies, which is weird. I keep going back and forth on that. So don't know what that's about. They smell really good though. Grandma says you should bake some muffins and keep some out and freeze the others. So you have muffins later too. Oh, and she also says, get back on your smoothies. Ace of Wands in reverse. Delays. Number one, delays. Need for patience. Oh my God. So annoying. So annoying. Setbacks and delays, waste, need to reconsider plans and ventures. Funny how Grandma said you need to get back on your smoothies again right before I pulled that card, because I feel like a lot of that has to do with, when we go through things that are challenging, and of course holidays to boot, and you have all these plans, and then the plans don't happen, you get off of your diet. You get off of paying attention to making sure that you are feeding yourself in the proper way. Like we all kind of do that. And so I feel like that's where the waste is coming from. Like you meant to eat those vegetables, but you didn't. Setbacks and delays. It's just about getting back into a routine. I feel like last week I kept saying the week before, once I get through this crazy weekend and I get back into next week and everything will just fall back into normal. And that did not happen at all. It actually felt like I hadn't quite left last week behind. I was still making up for it in some way. And that is really, it feels really strong around you also. Like you're still putting away the decorations and you're still trying to let go of that stuff. And you gotta, part of that is getting back into your own self-care routine and the smoothies and the eating better and all of those little things are part of what you need to do to get back into a healthy mindset. You need a healthy body that feels a little bit better. It's easier to get into a healthy mindset also, to get yourself to the right energy level that you need to be at in order to function. One more thing on that too. I've learned mostly the hard way that every morning I wake up, I'm not motivated. That's just how it is. I get up, I to my coffee, I out to smoke a cigarette and play on my phone, and I can I can tell myself I'm not ready to get up for hours, and then all of a sudden it's 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, it's really easy for me to do that because, oh, I'm just so tired and unmotivated. But if I do that for an hour and get up and motivate myself, I am almost always motivated. I have those few days here and there where my body is just like, no, we need rest today. The rest of the time, I'm able to get myself into it. So even when you're not working, make sure that you're doing that. I think that was also one of your goals for the new year too. So, okay, that is what I have for you, and I'm going to move on to Jenny. Focus continues to be on family this week. Not surprising, actually. I'm kind of glad that I wasn't available during our normal time because something tells me that you didn't necessarily know about that happening yet. And so I was very grateful actually that we had to reschedule our time for later on. And well, maybe you did know about it already, but still, I was grateful that we had to reschedule our time in order to ensure that I could be there for that. And I hope that things are better with your dad this week. I know that last week really seemed, everything kind of seemed up in the air. I feel like this week is actually going to be more, they've got a handle on things, maybe better knowledge of what's going on. Some diagnoses are happening, treatments are happening, in order to prevent this happening again anytime soon. But I also see a lot of frustration. And I have to say that classically, a lot of the time when you get past the worry part of a situation like this, and it seems like things are going to get a little better, it is actually pretty normal for it to turn into frustration all of a sudden. And I think that that's our natural reflex. Sorry, I gotta move my leg. I think that that's our natural reflex to protect ourselves in some way, so we're not hurt. Because anger it is exhausting, but it seems like it's less painful than hurt or grief. And because we have been triggered emotionally in this way, I think that it's also natural for us to have a little tiny bit of resentment because that person hurt us and made us worry. And then that evolves into guilt because you're feeling this way because they didn't do it on purpose just to piss you off. It just is something that happened. So I feel like this week, really what's important here is to be mindful of how you are processing all of this and not internalizing everything, obviously. you know um I'm sure that your dad is in a very, he's very frustrated and scared, and that's going to make him lash out because he's in this situation and he doesn't know any better. And it's hard not to take offense to that. I've been in that situation a couple of times. It's really hard not to take offense to that. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can't say, Dad, I know you're scared and I know you're frustrated, but I need you to not talk to me like that. It's whatever it is that you feel pulled to say in that situation. Even if he's going through what he's going through, it's not an excuse for people to use to manipulate the people around them for any reason. I don't care what the reason is. Um, I have to say that your girls are just amazing, have been amazing through this whole thing. I really feel like they're your rock. right now. They are worried also, but I feel like they're more worried about you and taking care of you, and you've done a great job. I just have to say, you have done a great job. They are so good. I know they're not perfect. Nobody is, but it's these moments that really matter, where you really see um where you really see how close to perfect they really are, I guess. If that makes sense. I'm gonna pull a card for you because this week I actually have my brain and remember that we're doing this now. I think I'm gonna do it for the horoscopes too. That might be fun. Maybe starting next week. Okay, one more shuffle here. I don't know why this is happening, but I'm feeling a lot of tension here on my face. Almost not sure if it's headaches, or I'm not sure if the frustration that you've been going through, like you're gritting your teeth a lot and it's causing a lot. Just be aware of that. Your card is the Eight of Swords in reverse. Swords are the element of strength and courage and bravery. The Eight of Swords in reverse indicates that the inquirer, that would be you, is his or her own worst enemy. Use strength to break out of a rut. I look at this as this, okay? Anytime we go through a difficult situation, specifically something that's out of the ordinary, it's really hard to get back into the swing of things. Like when you're worried about your dad being in the hospital, for example, your brain just goes like on vacation. It's focused on that and it can't seem to function outside of that. And as the days progress and as things change, it becomes difficult to get out of that, because you sort of want to keep focusing on the worry. You want to keep focusing on the what if and the blah 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 and the playing over it in your head. And so I feel that this is what this card is all about. It's basically saying, you know, a little bit more now. Things are a little bit less challenging and difficult. Now you have to sort of force your way yourself back into the reality of your day to day. And I also feel that part of the reason why this is so difficult is because I think you went on vacation and you come back and you're, already trying to get back into things, and then boom, this happens and it just knocks you right back. It's so hard sometimes to get back into your normal flow. And I'm not saying that you should be back into your normal flow today. I'm saying that, or this week, but I am saying that it's easier to do so. But it's also really easy to get sidetracked and sucked back into that and what's going on, and even the what ifs. And the worst thing in the world for me as a woman is the fact that we literally play the possibilities of what could have happened in our minds over and over and over and over again in an obsessive way. And that's where you need the strength to let that go. It didn't happen. It did not happen. Thank goodness it did not happen. So let's not try and manifest it happening, I guess. That is what I have for you, Jenny. Moving on to Linda. No planets in Virgo this week. We continue to have two influences in Virgo, Juno, which is going to be there all year long, all the way through the end of the year, as a matter of fact. We'll be focusing on relationships, or you will anyways. We also have the dark moon influencing things as well. The dark moon's focus is on family. It's retrograde. The dark moon is all about change. The Lilith is retrograde, so it's not about change. It's about accepting the situation and the people around you and their personalities, whether you like it or not, or what they are. So annoying, right? I know, so annoying. Juno is focused on your day-to-day schedule. So it's, again, where these people are infiltrating your schedule in some way, I guess, or there continues to be this how do I want to say this? There continues to be, it's almost like someone's calling you out on the amount of time you're spending with your loved ones, or something like that. I know that's already happened before. I don't think that means that it's not going to happen again, unfortunately. Ooh, pardon me. And you're tired of it. Tired of it. Totally don't blame me on that. Agreed. I'm tired of it too. Um, Two things. First thing is, rather than fighting personalities that you don't mesh, that your personality doesn't mesh with, find a way to communicate in a way that that personality understands. Opening up space to understand where they're coming from rather than defending yourself. And I'm being told also that listening is important. When somebody is questioning the amount of time you're spending with your loved ones, I think a lot of times when anybody approaches us like that, we get defensive. Like, how dare you tell me what to do? Okay. But in this case, I feel like there's a reason why you need to hear that. So when you get defensive, it's a good idea to go, wait, rather than getting defensive, let me listen to what they're saying. Or maybe I need to listen to what they're saying, if that makes sense. And I think this is why Juno's year-long visit to your sign can be so difficult and frustrating, because Virgos are very independent people. You've always been an independent person. You and your husband have been independent individually and managed to work that together. And it's the changes within that relationship, the relationships with your children, et cetera, all of these changes, you're still adjusting to them. And if you're fighting against what you don't like about it, you're not seeing what you need to learn from it, if that makes sense. I know, it's annoying. Very big lesson for me lately, also. Um, Still annoying. Yeah. Not exactly what I wanted to hear. Probably not what you want to hear either. Totally get that. Don't shoot the messenger, by the way. That came from one of your council members, a lovely lady, wears a very long light blue flowy dress. It's almost like she's the head and that dress, if that makes sense. Okay, and I'm pulling a card for you, strength. This card came up earlier on in the readings, but in the opposite position. Strength is always, you have the strength to rise above challenges, of course. You have the strength to meet people in the middle. You're not dimming your light. You're opening yourself up to understand someone else's perspective, even if it's wrong. um, and you can do it. Just because it's not the way you normally do things does not mean that you can't do it. It just, again, you're still going through an adjustment. Most of the huge adjustment is behind you, but you're still changing and adjusting. You just started a new job, for crying out loud, you know? It's gonna take a few weeks before you're in that sort of routine place again with it, if that makes sense. I have to say, all last week didn't seem like, okay, we're done with the holidays and now we can sort of fall into this new, back into our flow of life. That didn't happen. It really didn't feel like that happened. And I don't feel like this week is going to be that way either. Maybe closer, but I think it's going to take a little bit longer to find that new normal, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, Linda. Moving on to Matalyn, there are no planets in Virgo this week. We still have the dark moon in Virgo, which is focused on family. And we also have Juno in Virgo, which is focused on your day-to-day schedule. And Juno is all about how you relate to other people, which family is a big part of that. So family is coming up a lot here for you this week. Couple of things. First of all, Juno is going to be around for a while. I've looked ahead, and Juno will be in Virgo all year long. And these sort of challenges and lessons that come up around how you relate to others and what part you play in your relationships and what part others play in their relationships is really just going to keep coming up every single week, all year long, into next year, even a little bit. And so consequently, what's interesting about the way that the two are working with each other, the dark moon in retrograde, the dark moon's all about change, but it's a retrograde saying you can't change who people are. You can wish that they would change. You can focus all your energy on wanting them to change, and that includes the circumstances around them. You cannot do that. And because you cannot do that, it's a huge waste of energy wishing it could be different. I think so many people waste time, most of their time, myself included, wishing that things were different. It's like such a useless waste of energy. It really is. Juno is like infiltrating your schedule, going, yeah, you can't change them, but you have to spend time with them. You have to make sure that you make time for them. Hold on one second. Okay, sorry about that. Somebody knocked on the door. Um, So it's like they're forcing you to make time with them, or they're forcing you to see them. And it puts you in this situation where you sort of have to choose between all these people. One thing about being a Virgo is generally nobody is more organized than a Virgo, and that includes organizing your time and your space. A lot of people find themselves in a position of feeling like they're being pulled between all of these different people. But you can take control of that whenever you want and put the time to all these people in there on your time as much as possible. That doesn't necessarily mean over managing your time and controlling how much time everybody gets. But it does mean making sure that you have the time to do what you need to do for you while continuing to make space and time for other people, if that makes sense. Some people seem to be requiring more time than they need. And when that's the case, you have to put boundaries down on that. And sometimes you put boundaries down on how you spend that time also. It's really important. A lot of times when there's something in the relationship that's bothering them, that people will avoid the relationship rather than dealing with the problem, if that makes sense. Um, so that's basically what I have for you this week. I'm gonna pull a card for you because we're doing that now. I mean, last week I totally spaced on it, but last week was the last. This week, not so rushed to get things done, which is nice. Gonna cut the cards. By the way, I heard you going back to school, which I think is awesome. Nine of Pentacles. Money, money, money. That's what the Pentacles are all about. They're the earth element, earth girl, with being a Virgo and all of that stuff. Nine of Pentacles indicates fondness for luxury and the comforts of home, financial and emotional security. I like that. I like that. One thing. Start thinking about how you can create that for yourself. I was starting to worry about you and Daniel and needing to start becoming a little bit more independent. And I understand the need to not want to leave the security of home. I do. I really do. Um, the issue with it is, and what I tell Daniel all the time, is that someday I'm not going to be there to provide it. And it's better for you, better for him, if you are already doing that for yourself before that happens, because it is a horrendously difficult adjustment when all of a sudden you have to do it. And when you're older, it's a lot more difficult. So make sure that you, well, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm advising that you make the steps towards that independence and make sure that you have control over that. You're not putting your eggs in somebody else's basket, if that makes sense. That's what I have for you, darling. I'm going to take a little break and then I will be back. Okay, we're moving on to Glennis. I hope you're feeling better, by the way. Maybe we'll have to set up a chit chat pretty soon. Not a whole lot going on in Libra, so that helps in terms of having the time to feel better. Focus is still on relationships through the rest of this week. And then it kind of sort of moves at the end of the week to kind of in between focuses. So nothing really majorly pushing you in a specific direction to focus on something specific, if that makes sense, which is probably really good timing for this to happen, honestly. There's a couple of things I think that come up around this now. One of those things is I don't feel that the focus on relationships has anything to do with any particular relationship with another person. I feel like this has a lot to do with your relationship to yourself in many ways, if that makes sense, and sort of working on that, I guess, to sort of uh in some ways change the way you do things. I think, you kind of go back and forth. I know that, you said in the past that you're sort of an introverted Libra now, which means that you don't leave the house much and that you don't see people like a whole lot. And, you probably are perfectly happy with it being like that. And that's fine. But even for somebody who likes that, it can get really challenging, depressing, it's really important to kind of change. Even when you change the way you do things, it makes a difference, if that makes sense. I'm not saying leave the house because it's probably 150 million degrees outside. I wouldn't want to leave the house either, especially if you have air conditioning. So I do get that, but you do need outside air from time to time. So whenever you can do that with, around the heat, obviously. I know that's challenging, but nighttime is usually the time that I take that time if I can, if that makes sense. Or early in the morning if that's possible. It's not always possible for me, but I jump on it when I get it, if that makes sense. The other thing is, I feel like, in terms of what you've been going through health-wise, I feel like it's a very long healing process. I have to let this kitty cat in here. Come on. I sort of feel like it's been a really long, exhausting process. Get your butt in here. Okay. And I kind of feel like the frustration of that is sort of prolonging the healing process. Not to say that you are healed and you should just get over it. I'm not saying that. I would never say that. I think it's more because of the fact that it slowed you down. It's the frustration of it is it's almost like you're expending double the energy trying to do things rather than just taking your time and being patient with yourself, if that makes sense. Um, I'm also seeing crossword puzzles or something along those lines, and I'm not 100% sure if you're supposed to start doing them or get back into them. There's something about exercising your mind in that and using that as a tool to do that. I'm gonna pull a card for you because we're doing that. I did forget last week. In my defense, I did put everything into one day, which was kind of stupid. So just learn from that lesson, right? Okay, I'm gonna cut the cards here. for you, and that card is the Seven of Wands in reverse, which is really a defeat card, honestly. Which is no fun. The Seven of Wands in this position indicates struggle, battle, and weariness. Need to believe in oneself. A lot of this is around the recent health issues that you've been dealing with, or the recent issues that you've been dealing with. And I keep seeing pain. There's a lot of pain involved in whatever this is also. And so this has a lot to do with that frustration and just how much energy you're expending trying to do things and being frustrated about it. It's kind of a vicious cycle, I think, that we put ourselves in. And it makes a huge difference when you eliminate that as often as you can. We forget a lot, it's true, but as often as you can, you will start to see a difference in the amount of energy that you have daily when you become more when you identify that you're doing it more often and you put more boundaries on yourself in that process, if that makes sense. So this thing that you've been going through, it's almost like you're beating yourself up, and you got to stop beating yourself up because it's not allowing you to heal and move past what is going on, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, my friend. Oh, who's a good kitty? I'm moving on to Regina, and he scratched on his scratchy post. So we have to tell him that he's a good kitty. It's just what we have to do. He's literally, we can't see him, but he's literally back there looking at me like, hello, I'm a good kitty. You're supposed to tell me. Is if only we all had somebody there to tell us when we're being a good kitty, right? It would be so nice to have that. No planet in Scorpio. We do have Pallas Athene in Scorpio still, but in terms of all the planets that have just gone through, they're gone. Still being the good kitty. Look at him. Everything is gone. So we have a clean slate, basically. Focus is on your relationship to your finances, which is interesting. Very interesting, we'll say. Always a good time to focus on what kind of relationship you have with your finances. Always a good time for that, because we often find ourselves in toxic relationships with our finances, and it's toxicity that we created inadvertently for various different reasons. Even if we're good with money, that does not mean that we have a healthy relationship with it. For example, people who don't like to spend money and look for the cheapest deal and haggle to get a lower price don't have a good relationship with money, because money has to continuously flow in order to grow in many cases. So we have to be willing to release the money in order to be open to receiving money, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of different ways that we have unhealthy relationships with our finances. And this is really a good time to check in and see where you're at with that. I do feel that you have some financial goals and you have some plans. You definitely want to make some changes. This is a good place to start with that. The other thing is Pallas Athene continues to be in Scorpio, the warrior goddess, coming in to fight. But her focus is mainly on your relationships. Almost every Scorpio I've ever known, you piss them off personally, they get mad, they get over it. You hurt someone they love. and you've made an enemy for life. And Pallas Athene's energy behind that is pretty darn scary, actually, because it's like, well, if you watch the horoscopes, it's the same thing. It's the mama bear thing. It's okay, that's it. You hurt my baby, I'm gonna rip your teeth out, heart out, whatever. I feel like two things are coming up with this. One, it's a reminder that you have to let other people fight their battles. You can't fight their battles for them, even if it directly affects you. Like, say, financially, for example. The more you, okay, well, this is what I learned, okay? The more I shared my opinion, the more I tried to help, the more I tried to get people to see that this was not good for them, the more they resisted. And I got nowhere with what I wanted or what I thought was best. And so consequently, what I actually wound up doing was setting the whole situation back a lot and not getting what I wanted and not getting a resolution to the problem, which is very frustrating. It's also very difficult not to say anything because you can see a solution right there. It makes perfect sense to you. It just doesn't make perfect sense to them at the time, or they just can't do it, or they refuse to see it because you're constantly bringing it up. It's a vicious cycle, and you are wasting your energy on something that could be it could be used for something more productive, is what I'm saying on that. The other thing that comes up around that, I feel, has to do with when you're so focused on what other people are doing and the mistakes they're making, you're not focused on what you're doing and the mistakes that you're making. And this is a very common thing that we human beings do all the time. And again, it's a waste of our energy. It's like we ignore what we have control over to obsess over what we don't have control over and keep ourselves in this hamster wheel. And I feel like this week, that hamster wheel is going to become clear as day. And you're going to be like, whoa, okay, I have to do something different. I have to find a different way of dealing with this because staying in the hamster wheel is just not, it's not working for you. And this week really is all about busting that hamster wheel. Not even going to do it anymore. And finding a new way of dealing with the situation. I think that now the energy is perfect for you to start focusing on your goals and your plans and the things that you want to build. And it's really important that you don't get distracted with the other stuff. Like, for example, what your husband is doing, kitty tail, whether or not there's a kitty tail in the video or not. He really wants to get up somewhere where it's being blocked right now, and he really can't, and he really shouldn't. And oh my gosh, he's gonna try. No, we're not gonna. We're gonna say hi to Regina. Say hi. Say hi. It's really hard not to get distracted by such a cute little face. Which you really can't see, you just see an eyeball and that's it. Maybe two. Yeah. I'm sorry, you can't get up there right now. Your daddy's got stuff up there. Um, yeah. Distractions. They come up everywhere. I was actually looking at an app to try and help me organize my time and be more productive, and it asked me like all these questions about, you know, what, to try and find out, my personality and what are the things that keep tripping me up. And so I was literally just sitting here answering all these different questions about, different things and stuff like that. How often I do this, when do I do that? How often does this problem come up and stuff like that. And then in the middle of answering all the questions, I got a ding and my husband messaged me and I moved on to that and I read it and then that made me move to something else. And then I moved, and 2 hours later, I was swishing through my phone at all the open apps that are on my phone, which usually there's a lot. Okay, I'm not supposed to, but there's always a lot. And I land back on that app that I started and never finished. And the question I left was, how often do you get distracted during the day? And I'm like, clearly a lot, because that's just what happened. So yeah, focus on you. If it's a problem that, like, financially, in terms of how much money he's making, make sure that you have something set up to take care of that. Um, I have been learning that the more and more and more I look at it, the more I need to be independent and not reliant on another person. Not because my husband's bad at providing or, something's going to happen to him. What if it does? If it does, I need to be able to handle that myself. And, I think we all, women, should be financially independent as much as humanly possible. The Ace of Wands in reverse is your card. And the Ace of Wands in this position is all about miscommunication. It's all about delays. The Mercury retrograde is technically over. We end the shadow period on Tuesday this week. The shadow period's been kind of crazy. Okay, crazy. And so this just means that, I mean, I kind of feel like last week, we were all set and ready to get back, into normal after the craziness of the holidays. And I don't really feel that that happened, actually. It sort of felt more like, wait a minute, we have a little bit more to get through before we actually find this normal thing that we think is a thing, but it really isn't. So basically, I feel like maybe you started off last week with, I have this plan and everything's going to be great. And now at this point this week, there's fresh delays and that's frustrating. And you're like, see, of course, I knew that was going to happen. Don't do that. Don't go there. Okay. There's always going to be fresh delays. The point is, challenges happen so that we learn a way to work around them instead of sitting around complaining about them. That's always the goal. Find a way around it, not sit around and complain about it, which does nothing, right? That's what I have for you, Gina. Moving on to Theresa, we have no planets in Scorpio this week. Focus is on relationships, and we're for most of the week, and then we're kind of sort of moving in between focuses, but we do still have Palestine, which is focused on relationships. And Palestine is the warrior goddess. So we started this talking about this fighting for somebody or being an advocate for somebody last week. And we're sort of going into it again this week, if that makes sense. Which, in all honesty, is something that you're really good at. But at the same time, it's taking away from other things that you could be focusing on, which is not to say that you don't mind doing this, but at the same time, I feel like you're sort of thinking about all the things that you should be doing right now instead of this. And then there's some guilt in there. It almost feels like you're in this tornado full of emotions around this. And really important to step out of that tornado. I think the situation at hand is important enough for you to be as clear-headed as possible. part of the problem has a lot to do with obsessing, if that makes sense. Not to say that you're obsessing over the person or anything like that, but it is obsessing over the situation, especially the parts that you don't have any control over. And it's very common for us humans to sort of get sucked into this obsession over the things that we can't control when we find ourselves in the position of not being able to control it, if that makes sense. So there's an element of feeling like you're being pulled in two different directions. There's an element of feeling, needing to be an advocate or a voice for another person. And then at the same time, there's an element of feeling like, who's going to be that person for me, if that makes sense. It's always a problem when you're so good at it. And you don't have somebody else around that is. But I also see an opportunity for you to stop and relax. And I feel like something in your busy schedule reschedules and it opens up that time. And you're going to want to use that time wisely. I think the wisest thing that you can do with that time is take some time for you. And specifically, I'm seeing you leaving, going out, getting some coffee, getting some lunch, just taking yourself out on a date for a couple of hours, just to reconnect with you and shake off everything that has been going on. And this seems to be happening later on in the week, by the way. You can squeeze a spa day in there or a salon day or something, by all means, anything that, when you have to go to the spa or the salon, you have to sit and you have to, it forces you to relax. And that's what needs to happen. All of your muscles are tight and you need to release them and relax them and let them just kind of, everything just sort of loosen so that you are in the right state of mind to be able to go back into the situation, if that makes sense. I'm also being shown, oh, I'm sorry. I'm being told to tell you that you will not get help unless you ask for it, not demand it, not snarky. It would be nice if somebody would do this. You need to ask for it specifically. This lady in spirit is like, nobody is going to see it when you're hoping that they're going to see it. Just put it out there. Or maybe instead of asking for it, just basically getting in touch with your family and saying, I need help. This is how you can help me. Structure and organize the whole thing. Make it very easy for them to follow. Gonna pull a card for you, and that card is the Ace of Cups. Aces are new beginnings. Cups are emotion, or do represent emotion. The Ace of Cups in this position indicates new love, meeting a soulmate. Probably already did that. Emotional reason to celebrate. When this card is near the Empress, it may signify a birth. Well, the Empress did not, you know what, I'm checking with it's not the Empress. I was like, wait a minute here. First time the card doesn't go with the reading, but at the same time, I feel like this is this may be why it feels so chaotic around you, because this is happening around you also. So it's more than one thing. And it's not all bad necessarily. There is oftentimes some good that goes with the bad as well. So even though it's good, it's part of everything that's going on. I do see something, a new project around you anyways. So that's all of these things are playing into that feeling like you're being pulled in all these different directions. So that's what I have for you, Theresa. You're doing great, by the way. You are just killing it. You're rocking it. You're doing a fantastic job. Keep up the good work. Moving on to Jillian, we have no planet in Scorpio anymore. They all moved away and things can calm down a little bit, but we do continue to have Pallas Athene in Scorpio, focus on relationships. And I know we touched a little bit on that last week also, in terms of fighting on the behalf of somebody else. And it's actually really cute because you are a lot like me in that sense, but also like most Scorpios that I know. Scorpios that I know, if somebody insults them and pisses them off, they get mad. They forget about you. You don't exist to them anymore. They move on. But when somebody hurts their family, that's a completely different story. We will never forget what you did. And my whole entire life's goal is to kill you now, basically. It's a wonderful thing. You put your whole heart into that. You can't always fight other people's battles. And that's what that comes down to. And as much as you feel you're doing right, you have to look at it from an outside perspective also. So, good example for me, who does not like to embrace that it's not my place to fight on my family's behalf. Just went through something similar to that this week when John hurt his hand and, he hurt it at work, so he had to deal with workman's comp. Workman's comp is horrible, by the way. It's like worse than Medi-Cal. It's just terrible. And him having to go through that with workman's comp, the certain situations that took place during that, the Mama Hulk wanted to come out. Okay, I wanted to turn into a green monster and go and pick people up and smash their heads together because they're stupid, and hope that that jars some sort of working brain in them, and go fix the problem myself. And the problem with that is that if a man has his mommy coming to fix things for him, he doesn't look like a man. I've been in this situation with Uncle Dave. I've been in this situation with the kids. I've been in this situation with a lot of people, actually. And the truth is that there are times where you need to, like, say the person is sick and they need, or older and they need an advocate, then yes. But it is about picking your battles. And the hardest thing to let go of is what you think is right. Whether it is or isn't right, they have to fix the problem. And we have to shut our mouths and let them fix the problem, because if they don't learn how to fix the problem. It's a very frustrating cycle, unfortunately. But the other thing about this frustrating cycle is that we humans tend to focus on other people's problems because we see an easy fix in that, which puts our focus on what we have no control over, instead of looking at our own problems, which we can fix and we do have some control over. And it keeps us in this vicious pattern. And that's really the goal, ultimately, is to set ourselves up for failure, which you don't want to do. And I know that you don't want to do. So not saying that you shouldn't fight on behalf of your loved ones. I think that you are very good at that. The problem is is that sometimes it's not appropriate, and it's best for the other person, especially, to allow them to handle it in their way so they learn how to handle it. Just because I am good at fighting for myself does not mean that I should stand up and fight for everybody else. Eventually, my children are going to need to fight their own battles. I won't be here to do it for them. So it's actually, in many cases, in some circumstances, a disservice to them to do that, if that makes sense. Definitely not what I wanted to hear either. Ace of Wands, new beginnings, new adventures, new projects. Wands are fire. Ace of Wands in this position indicates new beginnings, fresh ideas, opportunity to branch out. Birth does not mean you give birth necessarily. It could also indicate the birth of new ideas as well, or new projects or things like that. So I actually am seeing a lot of things changing for you in the next couple of months. Things are just all of a sudden going to be moving in all these different directions, and it's gonna go from things are not moving at all to wow, they just keep on moving. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you don't have a lot of time to adjust to the changes either, which can be a little bit scary. So take a moment every now and then just to see where you've been and look at where you are and keep moving forward to your goals. Do you keep working at it? You will get there eventually. So that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Peg, first of all, we are going to kick off the week with the moon in Sagittarius. We have Venus in Sagittarius. We have Mercury in Sagittarius. The shadow period of the retrograde ends Tuesday. And what a shadow period it was. I have to say, most people have heard that this happened. I don't think everybody realizes this, that it was the absolute end of the retrograde. But last week on Tuesday, the day that the Mercury retrograde ended in Sagittarius, two planes like crashed into each other in Japan right after an earthquake. One of them was an earthquake relief plane. I thought to myself, obviously, I feel bad for the people that were injured and didn't make it in that accident, but that's the most epic end to a Mercury retrograde I think I've ever heard, and typical of Sagittarius. And now I'm a little bit scared for the next one, to be honest with you, because we're going to have another one. Venus, let's take a look, see here. We got a couple of things. We have Mercury and Venus in a square with Saturn as well as Neptune. Neptune's focus is on inner trauma, letting go, finding triggers, understanding the specific situations that caused you to create bad habits in order to protect yourself. And with Mercury and Venus's focus on long-term financial goals, it's like these challenges are coming up specifically to direct your attention to these things. Because most of us have a specific relationship with our finances, and it follows the same pattern that we rarely change. We might implement a few changes here and there, but understanding the relationship that we have with our money, how we feel about our money. There's a lot of people running around saying, I hate money because of this and that other thing. You should never hate money. Things don't go to places that hate them, right? We don't want to hate money because then it won't come to us. And in terms of understanding and resolving these financial issues, we need the right kind of support. And that's where Saturn comes in. Saturn is like, be responsible for your actions. And if you want the right support, you need to choose the responsible support for this problem, like a financial planner, for example, somebody who is really knowledgeable and really good at helping you build the relationship that you want to build with your finances. Does that make sense? The moon sort of amplifies, oh, sorry. The moon sort of amplifies both of these challenges because unfortunately, it's a challenge from both, not anything good, or in terms of them lining up with planets in a helpful way. They're both just creating this challenge, and the moon amplifies that challenge a lot at the beginning of the week through Tuesday, actually. Will be in your sign Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So through Tuesday, it's a very emotional thing to identify these things. But I think it has to be emotional. I mean, if we don't really feel it down to our toes, we're less likely to do anything about it to fix the problem. And I just feel that with the goals that you set up for the year and everything that you want to make happen this year, this relationship has to change. You have to put yourself in a positive um relationship with your money in order to get where you need to go, if that makes sense. It's because it's not what you put into your business. And I think that's where a lot of us get screwed up is we think if we just keep putting all of our energy into the business, eventually the money will come. Well, that's true. But if you're worrying about whether the money is going to come, if you're worrying about how much and when, if you're stuck on the specifics of how it's going to happen, it's getting in the way of your career success. And so it's almost like all the energy that we're putting into it is wasted in many cases. So it's a good week to check in with that, if that makes sense. Series Series is also an influence, continues to be an influence. We haven't talked a lot about it because there's been so much other stuff going on in Sagittarius, but Ceres is still very much there, putting that maternal instinct into your financial plans. And I feel like a lot of this has to do with building your financial security. It also has a lot to do with building a system that allows your money to take care of you in some way. And I'm not exactly sure what that means. That's up to you to find out how that works by getting the right support, if you know what I mean. So that's that. We're about to be interrupted by a kitty cat. You might, oh, he's being very, very careful not to show himself I mean, he's literally right in front of my face. He's being very careful not to show himself on the video, aren't you? He got in here and he's kind of stuck in here until we're done. So he's going to be a big pain in the rear until that happens. It's what he does. Pulling a card, we have the Four of Swords in reverse. Interesting. Interesting. Let's take a look. See here what the book says, and then we will move into it further. The Four of Swords in reverse indicates recuperation and recovery. If you had a weekend like I did last weekend, you need a lot of recuperation and recovery. But I kind of feel like this card specifically has to do more with like emotional recovery, if that makes sense. Um, two things about that. One, this card has a lot to do with letting go. Those are the words I'm being given specifically, letting go. And there's certain things that I feel you are in the process of letting go. And there is some recovery involved in that. The other thing is, I'm being told to tell you that it's okay to take a little bit of extra time off from the holidays. Because I feel it was exhausting. I get it. And you're kind of sort of beating yourself over. I just need to get going. Ease into it. It's not a race. Ease into it. So that's what I have for you, Pig. Mama Sherri, finally, Mama Sherri, we have, first of all, we're kicking off the week with the moon coming into your sign for the first 3 days of the week. We have Venus and we have Mercury still in Sagittarius. Both planets focus on long-term financial goals. Both planets squared with Neptune and Saturn. Neptune's focus is on deep emotional trauma, lots of triggers around that. Saturn is focusing that responsibility on making sure that you have the right support system for all of it. So, a couple of things here. It's the beginning of the year. A lot of us are working on our long-term financial goals. Your relationship with money is really important. Really identifying the things that you, the specific communication patterns and things that you do that have a negative impact on the relationship that you have with money. So for instance, over what's the word I'm looking for? Over planning, being over cautious and over careful in some ways with your money. Not saying be irresponsible with your money, but when you worry about how much, when you worry about having enough, it sort of stunts the money coming in, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like obsessing over it, I guess. And the moon amplifies all this, like the first couple of days of the week when she moves into a conjunction with both planets on Monday and Tuesday. And I feel like, you know, you don't really identify when there's a problem that needs to be fixed until you feel that there's a problem that needs to be fixed. And then you're more likely to actually do something about it, to say, I mean, I don't want to feel this again. Let me eliminate the problem by fixing the problem. Hopefully, in theory, that's how that works. We don't all do it every single time. I agree. Maybe some of us better than others, but I can't even ring that bell because I fall back into bad habits all the time. And I think that you being an independent woman, a lot of your life, it does have an effect because you get so used to micromanaging your money in order to have security and to take care of everything, that starts to stunt the relationship with your finances, if that makes sense. What do you do about that? Maybe just not worry so much about how much you have. As long as things are paid, everything is fine. Um, Also, it doesn't have to be something that you worry about constantly or every day. You don't always have to deny yourself because you don't have enough, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, yeah. I'm gonna pull a card for you, and while I am shuffling these cards, Ceres is also still in Sagittarius, focused on those long-term financial goals also. Ceres, like the great mother, that maternal influence, all about security. And I think that that's a lot of what drives your worries, honestly, is because you are on your own. You know, you have to create that security for yourself. And one of the things that I have decided to leave behind in 2023 was chasing security. It's just, it doesn't exist. You can do everything you possibly can to create that for yourself, and it can change on a dime, and it can be taken away in an instant, and then you're chasing it again. You'll always be taken care of, and you know that, and you know that what you have to fall back on, and there's no need to chase that security in that sense. We have the Nine of Pentacles in reverse is your card that I just pulled. The Nine of Pentacles in reverse indicates fears over financial loss or danger in property matters. So I feel that a lot of that is what's behind the worries. There isn't an actual danger of financial loss. I don't see that. It's a constant worry that in some case, for some reason, if you worry about it, then you have control over it, but you never have control over it, so you never stop worrying. It's that vicious cycle. You taught me how catastrophic that really is. And so it's something to think about this week. Just changing those mindsets a little bit will open things up and help things a great deal. So that's what I have for you. And I love you. And that's what I have for everybody. Thanks for hanging out with the readings. I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. You all know this. I will see you next week. You guys do whatever you can to make it a great week. I'll see you next time.